Okay. All right. Can you hear me? Hi, guys. This is hello, guys. This is Xiang. Hi, guys. Can you hear me? If you can hear me, please say 1. If you can hear me, say 1. If you cannot, say 0. Okay. I'm gonna type you. If you can hear me. Can hear and see me, type 1. If not type by an error, I was just kidding. If you cannot hear or see me, type 2. All right, thank you so much for being here. I don't expect all of you come because the school officially canceled everything, and I'm just here to trying to test the live streams. It seems that YouTube is not working very well because I was trying to show my slides on one side screen and also show my face on the other side, so if I'm more interactive, so maybe I can write down on the whiteboard or a piece of a sheet of paper about things you can see, but that just didn't work on my laptop, and laptop just got really slow. In just a few minutes ago, it almost died, and the camera wasn't working very well. So I was just trying to really to make sure that this function works. So it seems that at least for me, for my laptop, there's some technical issues. I do have to look into it. If this couldn't be fixed, then I am thinking about moving to another platform, which is called Zoom. I think many of faculties are starting using that. I would wonder how many of you are familiar with using Zoom. I'm also going to type it on the comment level, so you can just say if 1 would be yes, you are familiar with. 0 will be no, you are not familiar with Zoom. Okay. Are you familiar? I'm going to type this thing at the comment on the chat section. Just give me 1 second. Oh, sorry. My bad. Yeah, type 2. Yeah, just type 2 if no. Yeah, just because. So type 0. I'm sorry. Type 0. I'm sorry. If you type 2 and I will say 2. Yeah, cool. All right. I'm gonna wait for your responses. Many of you saying 2, and okay, 0 it will be regarded as 2. I'm sorry for my mistake. So okay, I'll probably send out more materials because I'm also going to research the Zoom. I tried once, and I was able to use Zoom to hold a small meeting of like 2 to 3 people, and I can share my slides and also to the meet attendees via online. And I'll also know that there are both the Zoom is available for Mac, PC, Chromebook, as well as both iPhone and Android phones, also iPad as well. So it's very flexible. It has you can download it for free from like any types of app stores, whether it's like Google Play or Apple App Store, or just go to the website of Zoom, just search ZOOM, download it, and I will send out a link that actually CalState LA offers Zoom for free, and I will send out a announcements of this live show, so you can go to the website, and they will give you some instructions about how to use it. So basically, you just download Zoom, install it on whatever you want, your phone, your tablet, your iPad, your PC, Mac, Chromebook, whatever you want. What kind of device? I think all devices are supported. And then you need to get a good internet connection. I do not know like whether the cellular data would work. At least you need some good connection. After that, you just log in using your CalCLA account, and I'll send you some information about how to install it and do it. So seems like the most of you are not familiar with it, and YouTube is not working for me, at least my laptop. I'll keep trying it and I'll keep posting it. If this does not, if like it does work out, I will definitely, continue to use YouTube, because it's, everybody has a YouTube account. Everybody watch YouTube shows every day, because I watch a YouTube live show every day, and I think many of you probably would do so. And it's the easiest way for us to, to communicate. And if not, it's not working very well, then we just switch to the Zoom, which has a little bit more functionality, but that's something new to most of you. So we do have to spend time to work on that. But other than that, I think I'll probably have to cut short, because I cannot really share my slides with you today because of technical issues I have with my laptop. So I'll just be real quick, and hope this section will be really short. And I know you guys are probably at home, so be sure to get enough rest and don't get infected. That's one of my wish. So today we're just going to talk a little bit about your midterm. And before talking about that, I'm just trying to tell you that don't worry about this. So I only this live stream is not available to the public, so only if you guys know the link can really see it. So don't worry about breach of your privacy about your midterm grade, or if you're concerned about grade. I won't talk about individual grades. Will only talk a little bit about how the class is performing and what kinds of questions that people most struggle with. So that's the thing I want to talk about. So let me look at my agenda. So since I cannot really see my slides right now, so we talk about this, and then we're going to talk about. So we're just going to go over some questions on the midterm. So first thing about the midterm, everybody did a really good grade, did a very good job. I think most of you are doing very well, at least in comparison to the past midterms. And I think that's mostly because you worked really hard for it, and you all attended my review section, and that's really good for you guys. So if you have any questions about the grade, please let me know. I will be able to just take photo of your Scantron, so you can compare which question you got wrong and to see if there is any errors in terms of gradings. And also, I want to clarify that the final grades for the midterm includes both the Scantron, all the responses are recorded in your Scantron, as well as the 10-point X credits that I asked you guys to complete. I think all of you did that, so everybody got your X credit, which is a very good thing. And by the way, I would thank you so much for your honest feedback. And when I look at feedback, actually, I tear off the last 2 pages of exam, so I won't be able to see who wrote this feedback. Even if you were just cursing me, or just praising me, I have no idea who you are. So you don't worry about say, okay, I'll look at I'll come say I will just go back at you and doing track you and say, hey, why you just cursing me? Why is such a bad word? I won't do that at all. I'll just pretend this is something that's totally anonymous, and I think many of your feedbacks are really helpful. And other than that, I'm just going to dive a little bit into exam. So I wonder if you are on Canvas right now. Can you please go to the Canvas site? There is if you go to Canvas, there is a file section, and I already uploaded the midterms key. So it's at the file section. You can just download it. And I cannot see it. Yes. So let's just all look at the key of the midterm right now. So please go to your Canvas section and click at the midterms key and let me know if you're ready. If you're ready for the midterm, please type 1. If you're not ready, please type 0. I'm just going to type. I'm going to also want to type it out. So please type 1 if you are on the key of the midterm. Okay. All right. I saw like many of you are on the key right now. Just give this some time to other students because I know there's a delay, potential delay in it. So thank you guys so much. I'm sorry for those who are new here. I cannot really be able to show the slides or whatever documents I have on my laptop, and that really almost crashed my laptop just a few minutes ago. So I probably will see my boring face all the time, but I do apologize. I'll try to test it, and if that works, we'll switch to a new platform in the future. I'll keep you guys posted. So, okay, seems like all of you are on this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, like 8. Yeah, I'm going to just give you like a few seconds to go to the canvas and to look at the midterm key. Okay, we'll start from there, and after that we'll talk a little bit about our experiment, and I will end this section. I will instead upload a kind of video of my lectures on experiment and writing up the research method, the method section later, and you can just access that via the link I send out to the canvas or just go to my YouTube channel. I'll talk about that later today. So, okay, let's just start looking at midterm exam. So, let's look at the first question at page 2. So it's this question is about 3, the theories where there's theory, where there's prediction, what's the relation between theory, hypothesis, predictions. So this is basically what the question is. So as you can see, most of the questions are kind of embedded in sort of context. So I want to make sure you guys can. The reason why I'm doing this is I want to make sure that you guys can apply what you learn from the methods class, which are really abstract, very boring, to a sort of context. So this kind of thing should be very easiest because, like we talked about in class, all the hypotheses, which are tentative answers to your research questions, they should be derived from theories. And theory part including any theories that others propose or kind of pass the research evidence. So we use whatever is out there to propose our hypothesis. And the prediction was defined in terms of what would happen, what would be predicted, what you can predict if your hypothesis is confirmed. Okay, so the logic will start from the theory, then you propose a hypothesis based on theory and propose the predictions based upon hypothesis, because prediction of whatever is going to happen if your hypothesis is confirmed, if you have something going on. So the correct answer is B for the first question. And please let me know if you've got any questions. Leave them in a comment. And if there is anything you want me to clarify, you want me to go slower, right? So don't worry about that. Okay, cool. Thank you guys for interacting with me. And let's move to the second question. Imagine the dots, depict on right represented interplay the reliability and the validity of the measure. The center of the dartboard really represents the construct we trying to measure. So basically, it's a classic analogy of validity and reliability. So just trying to remember what validity and reliability mean. So here, the reliability basically is about consistency. It's about whether the measurement, whether all the items of measurement can consistently measure something, whether it's consistent over time. So that's what we call the temporal stability, or is the consistency across different items. So, for example, you have 10 questions to measure someone's, let's say, self-worth. And so you probably will wonder whether these 10 questions would hit would consistently with each other, right? They're not in conflict with each other, right? They should shoot in the same direction. They shouldn't be like shooting like all over the places. So if you see like the the those arrows where those dots really hanging together very well, you probably would expect to have a sort of consistency, and that means high reliability. The more closer the dots are, the more reliable these things would be. So the dot A actually shows what we called reliability, because everything hangs together very well. And B also shows reliability because all the dots are together. They're kind of groupy. However, the validity is kind of depicted in another way, which is like whether you can hit the center of the target. So validity, like actually I mean constructability. I'm not talking about generalizability or internalability. I'm only talking about constructability. Constructability means the extent to which you can measure stuff using whatever you want to measure. So in other words, is whether your scales or measurement can capture what the target construct, whether I can shoot the target. So that's the question that validity really asks about. So here you can see that the B graph, where all the all the hits are in the middle, in the center of target. That means it has high validity because the center target was shot for multiple times. So it's both reliable and valid for the board B. However, for the board A, all the shots actually missed the center target. Although they're hand together very well, they're all coming together, suggesting they're highly reliable. But this is not really valid because you fail to shoot at the center of the board. So the correct answer would be C, because shots on the board A is reliable but not valid, while shots on board B is both reliable and valid. And you definitely want the kind of measurement that is both reliable and valid, because it can consistently hit together, and the place where they hit is the center of the board, is the target construct you want to measure. So that's kind of conceptual understanding of validity and reliability. And just what, by the way, any measurement that is reliable doesn't mean that it's valid, because reliability and validity are two different things. So you want to have both high reliability and high validity at the same time. But if you have high validity, does not necessarily mean you have high reliability, and vice versa. Okay, just let me know if you got any questions. Okay. So question 3, Bell is running a study on the difference between test performance based on room temperature, hot and cold. So it's about null hypothesis. So remember, we talk about the class, we have hypothesis, which is the responses to your research question. We also talked about other two types of hypothesis, which actually directly come down from the statistics. That is null hypothesis and alternative hypothesis. So null hypothesis is what the hypothesis statistically is going to test. It basically means that, okay, provided that provided that there's you have a sample or something that, and there's no difference between whatsoever the groups, no effects of A on B, or no relationship between variable A and variable B, and that basically means there's nothing going on. So null hypothesis means whatever you're testing is not there. So here is this person Bell is trying to test the difference on test performance based on room temperature. Basically, this person is expecting a difference. So here the null hypothesis would be the opposite of what this person is setting. There would be no difference, right? So which answer indicates no difference? And that would be answer C. Test temperature in the hot room, test performance in the hot room equals to the test performance in the cold room. So there will be no difference in the test performance between rooms with different temperature. So that's basically what they were trying to test. Question 4, I think, is probably would be the easiest one, I guess. Sorry, just one moment, just hang on. So Carolina, are you on the midterm key right now? Because I saw you typed both 1 and 2. So if you haven't been like seeing the midterm key, please go to the Canvas side, go to the file section, and click the midterm key. There is something. Okay, cool, very good, thank you. And hi guys. For those who just came here, I'm sorry I just couldn't show my slides, so I'm just instruct you guys to go to the Canvas and look at the key together. So question 4, I think that will be probably the easiest question in here. Once, if you are kind of have a brief impression about what it was covered in class, and at least you came to my class, this is just kind of question checking whether you pay attention to or not. I don't think I'm not. Again, I'm just not trying to test whether you memorize all these definitions. At least you should have sort of impression of something, right? So the Bellman report that we're talking about is what happened in the week of ethics. We talk about the 3 principles proposed by the Bellman report, which lays the foundation for the ethical research behavior. And the 3 principles are justice, autonomy, and beneficence. So basically, justice means that any study, any recruitment participant should be justifiable. We need to make sure that we provide a fair environment to recruit participants. We shouldn't really recruit participants who are kind of have troubles. We shouldn't discriminate against participants, but we should make sure that our studies are conducted in a justice kind of good way, in a fair way. And for the beneficence, basically means that participants should not be exposed to much risks. Risks should always be less than benefit. And autonomy basically means that participants are supposed to, have their own rights, decide whether or not they're having rights, whether or not to go to participate in the experiment. So for the independence, this is definitely not something that will be relevant for the Bellman report. It will be more relevant in terms of other things like declaration of independence, something like that. But it's a different thing. So this is just kind of sort of a attention check question for question 4. I don't think too many of you got it wrong. I have a sheet. Here it says, like, most of you got it right, which is a good thing. So let's move on to question 5. In study of FX music type on test performance, Carl observed that test performance only increased when classical music was played. So this is a question that gets very tricky. But again, luckily, some of you got it correct. So and actually, like, say 80% of you got it correct, and only 20% of you got it wrong. So this seems to be a little bit confusing because many people got it wrong because they chose the answer B, the temporal precedent, but the correct answer is D. So I'm here to explain why the correct answer is D. So basically, the context says that this person found that the test performance only increased when classical music was played, but not when the rap music was played. So that's basically what I found. This actually fits into the covariation cause and effect, because if you look at this definition of covariation cause and effect, that means whenever there is cause, there is effect, and whenever there is no cause, let's say whenever the classical music is not played, and the test of performance is not there is not, the test performance won't be increased, and test performance only increased if you have classical music played. And if you have rap music, that means the absence of classical music. So if there is absence of classical music, then that performance doesn't really increase. So you have a covariation cause and effect. But some people would say, okay, maybe this also implies that okay, you play music and then you increase your test performance. Well, this is not 100% wrong, but I think this doesn't really fit into this context as much as the covariation cause and effect, because the Carl actually, so basically the sentence that says Carl observed the test score only increased when classical music was played. This didn't really specify if the test performance is measured after the music play or during the music was played, right? So we cannot really figure out which comes first. What if this person, Carl, conducted a study that had participants, listen to music while they were tested for their performance, and these two things happen at the same time. So in that sense, you cannot really figure out which comes first. Well, the temporal precedence means that the cause should always comes before the effect. That means the music should always comes before the increase in test performance. However, we do not have enough information to justify the temporal precedence, although the statement made in this question seem to imply that, but we still cannot really make good decision on whether or not there is a temporal precedence unless it is made very clear that music was played before the test performance was tested. So the answer B is not the most appropriate, the best answer. So the best answer for here, question 5, would be D, covariation of cause and effect. Okay, so let me know if you got any questions. Just leave in the comments, okay? And question 6, I think this is about, not so many of you got wrong either. Actually, sorry about that. Actually, most of you got wrong, and I have to look into it very carefully. So question 6 sort of is kind of connects to question 5 in terms of the context. Again, the DIV would be the music type. We have rap versus classical music, and DV would be test performance. So forget about that, like for a moment. So this question is really about the scale of measurement. Okay. So the IV is music type, right? So nobody would have got wrong. So because for IV for blank number 1, every choices has music type, but some people like chose a different, like say the ordinal, and that was wrong because the music type, whether it's rap or classical music, they don't the person actually didn't really rank them. They're only different categories. They're only different types of music. So if you say this is ordinal variable, that means you actually rank music. Okay, you probably prefer rap music to the classical music. So you rank rap music higher compared to classical music. However, this doesn't work for this study because they're only interested in the type of music, different categories of music on the test performance. So if that's said, you will rule out answer C and answer A. So you only choose between answer B and answer D. Okay. And answer D, the difference between answer D and answer B would be the scale. So, like I said in class, the Likert type scales are the interval scales. They are not ratio scales because ratio scales would have absolutely 0 points, right? Now we can say, you test performance can be 0 because everyone can, they did really badly and they might score from 0 out of 100. Yes, that's a possibility, right? But here in this scenario, you only have 7-point scales, and if you're using 7-point scale, that should be interval scales. They're not ratio scales. They are like the percentage they earned or the points they make. Let's say if you're taking this exam, the 0 points would make sense, right? That means you probably got everything wrong, which is a very, very unfortunate situation. But here you have the test performance was not, tested in a way the same as we're taking the midterm. Basically, they're using Likert type 7-point scales. Although I didn't really specify that because that was meant to kind of increase a little bit confusion. So I just want you guys to make sure you can make your own judgment, because 7-point scale, remember, that's what we call interval scales. And the key is essence of interval scales is that the scale points, the adjacent scale points between each other are supposed to be the same. Let's say the difference between 0.1 and 0.2 would be the difference between 0.3 and 0.4, and that difference would be the same as 0.4 and 0.5. So it's like climbing a ladder or steps. Interval scales is like that. The gaps between different scale points are the same. So that's the essence of the interval scale, and that's why we have to make sure, tell people, okay, how many points are used in the scale? The 7 point, 8 point, like 9 point, and so forth. So sorry, this question seems a little bit tricky, because the performance, everybody would assume this is something that has zero, that can be measured using ratio scales. I think you're right, but here we only got 7-point scale, and if it's a 7-point scale, and then probably you are actually assuming this should be Likert type scale, which is interval. So the correct answer would be interval scale. I think Frank, you are right on that. If but if it's a 0 to 7 and you count it, there will be 8 points, right? So I think there's something that I may just be more clear about it, and maybe next time is to make sure that you understand that Likert type scales is usually do not include 0 points. Most of the time, it doesn't really have 0 points. And we only care about the difference, comparisons, right? Whether I'm score higher than you or you score lower than me. We don't really care about who scores 0. So that's the essence of Likert type scales, and it applies to many psychological constructs, which 0 score doesn't make sense, like your intelligence, like your self-esteem. Constructs, which 0 score doesn't make sense, like your intelligence, like your self-esteem. If you don't have any more questions, just feel free to leave your comments over here or chat with me when I'm going over. So question number 7 would be relatively, you guys did relatively well, so I'm just gonna skip it very quickly because this is a study sort of having a very complicated background. Basically, want to hire to develop a new program and to decrease test anxiety. So this person recruited 100 participants, randomly assigned them. So this will be an experiment. And we got 3 conditions: program A, X, Z, and the no program. And after participation in 3 weeks, so we measured anxiety on a 1 to 10 scale. So this is again a Likert type scale, right? So we've got different scale points. And so which of the following is true about this study? So since we've got random assignment, right? And you got control group, you got a manipulation, this is really an experiment, and the program type is and the IV would be the type of program, because the manipulation comes with different types, program X, Z, and no program. And so since the first sentence says that this person is looking at decrease in test anxiety, so it's the effect of the program on anxiety, and the DV would be the test anxiety. It shouldn't be the predictor, right? So since an experiment, you can rule out option A and B. Since you shouldn't say, okay, gender is a predictor variable, because this person didn't really care about gender. He only care about the program, how this program would reduce anxiety. So gender is something you don't want to say. So the correct answer would be C. So this is relatively clear and easier question. So, but anyways, most of you did got the points that's you deserve, which is a good thing. And next question 8, and most of you also got it right. So basically, so I'm just trying to ask what kinds of I was trying to test your understanding of different ways to make samples. We have, let's say, a random sampling, you have non-random sampling. So here, basically, it argues that the procedure asks people to break the participants into different groups. right? In these groups, those consist of like homogeneous like individuals, whether they share the same race and ethnicities, whether they're sharing the same gender, or whatever kind of variable you're interested in. So basically, this is what we called stratified sampling, because in many cases, when you want, especially when you want to have a nationally represented sample, for example, you are essentially trying to replicate certain characteristics of the population. Let's say in the U.S. population, there are equal number of male and female in the U.S. population, and you want to have a like 200 people recruited and from 200 Americans recruited as your participants, right? And to ensure that your sample is representative of the whole nation, you also want to make sure that there are 50 males and 50 female participants. So what you can do, you have to do stratified sampling. So firstly, in first step, you categorize participants, categorize population into male versus female group. And from each group, you randomly select 50 participants. So you would end up having 100 participants total. You will go to the male group and randomly select 50 males out of the whole, every man in the United States, and go to the female group and randomly select 50 participants from the female population. And you connect both groups together, you will end up having 100 participants that have 50 male and 50 female. So this way you have a stratified sampling. And the groups that you break the whole population into would be what we call the strata or subgroups. So this is what it is. And cluster sampling, basically you just go to a map, divide a map like divide your cake into different locations, and to randomly pick a few locations, not all of them. And in each location, you either use everybody as a participant, or you do another random sampling in each location you pick, and those folks who ended up that you selected would be part of your participants. Random sample basically just random choose participant from the whole population. You do not do any dividends. You don't divide the whole population into different subgroups or divide anything geographically. Purpose sampling definitely is not about probability. It's a non-probability sampling, because everybody has a different probability of being sampled. And also, you probably would just go to, let's say, this one example I gave in lecture would be go to movie theaters. You probably would just check other like people who are just movie attendees to see how they like the movie. So those folks will become your participants. So the correct answer would be B, stratified. All right. Yes, Frank, you are right. That's yes, 1 to 7, not 0 to 7. 0 to 7 would be an 8-point scale, and usually the Likert type scale doesn't include 0 score, but sometimes it does. But that in that case, the 0 doesn't mean 0 score, because the one situation that Likert type scale includes 0 would be, let's say, 7-point Likert types would be -3 to 3. So here you have -3, -2, -1, 0, 0 being the midpoint, and 1, 2, 3. So that's the only case I can think that Likert type scale that includes 0. But normally, mostly 0 on Likert type scale doesn't include 0 points, because Likert type scale is an interval scale, and interval scales doesn't really have a meaningful 0 point. Okay. Let's go back to the midterm. Let's can speed up a little bit. So question 9, so this question seems to be a little bit confusing, and because many of you got it wrong, unfortunately. So basically this person is interested in the dropout rates. And we just forget about this context. If I were you, I'd just skim through the first 1-2 sentences and look at the last sentence very carefully. Okay, this says, in this scenario, the dropout rates in Californian universities should be an example of what kind of variable, right? So dropout rates, any rates, that means percentages, right? We have 0 dropout rates to 100%, right? Imagine the worst case is everybody would drop out at the end of the college because this college really sucks, or it's a really nice college. Everyone can have very low student allowance and classes are easy to pass, so everybody will stay in the university. So there could be two extreme cases where everybody will be retained or everybody will drop out, right? So the 0 point would make sense for the dropout rates, meaning no one would leave the school, and if you look at the choices, the only choice that has a meaningful 0 point would be choice A, ratio scale. Again, this is about ratio scale, difference between ratio scale and interval scales. And this is very important. So one thing that seems to be confusing is the first two sentences of the question, because that was designed, to complicate it, because that would be too easy for you. And I'm sorry about that, but I just hope you guys the next time you take the exam, just read all the words very carefully, because some of the information might not be necessarily useful for you to answer a question. And in the real world, when you're doing your own stuff, you have to kind of have the ability to pick the most important thing, to find out the key stuffs before you answer any question or do anything. Look at the key stuff. That's the thing that I got trained in graduate school in those doctoral programs, I think, because there's so much information. You always got to overload it. What you want to do is look at the key things. That and you grab those things first, then you look at other things. So here, because one of the confusing thing is about this person going to rank different types of university in terms of the dropout rates. So that's a different thing. The rank of the dropout rates is different from the dropout rate itself, right? Just like I'm going to rank you in terms of height in my class. Maybe one day, imagine I go back to the classroom and have you guys stand up and rank. But your height isn't ratio scale, because if someone doesn't exist, the height would be 0, right? So I'm just kidding. So in that case, the heights are ratio scales, are measured using ratio scales. Well, the rank of the height from very high to low, like say Frank or someone, you rank it first because you are highest in my class. I just made up. I'm sorry, and probably someone else would have to would not rank it as high. You have like number 1, number 2, number 3 in terms of height. And so those ranks are ordinal variables, and many of you chose like answer D, ordinal variables, because you're thinking I'm asking you for the rank, but in fact this question is asking about the dropout rates. So that's the key you want to looking at. So just be careful of what I'm asking of the questions. But each question itself is actually relatively easy. So just be very careful. Okay. I'm going to look at other question 10, since you don't have a question yet. All operation definitions. So operation definition, remember this operation definition is different from the definition of the construct. Operation definition comes from theory. Firstly, it should be theory driven, and secondly, it's about an observation, measurement / manipulation. Right? It's something that you can do using certain procedure. For example, what is aggression? We talk about we can operationalize aggression using different theories, like let's say frustration or aggression theory. Some people who are aggressive because of being frustrated, they tend to have aggressive behavior, aggressive thoughts and intentions. There are so many ways you can operationalize a certain abstract construct. So you should be observable. You should translate a kind of abstract thing to a more testable, doable, observable, manipulatable, measurable one. Right? And then it should be theoretical driven. But a lot of you chose answer C because manipulated and theory driven. I want just to clarify, not all the operation definition has to be manipulated. Only if you want to design some manipulations should you create some sort of procedures to manipulate them. If you just want to measure them, so you can forget about manipulation. So what I'm trying to say is that some of the operation definition are manipulations or manipulated, but not all of them. So the answer C is not correct. whether you're doing manipulation or measurement or whatever you want to do in operation definition, they should be observable. That's the key. If you're doing manipulation, it's observable, testable. If you're doing measurement, it also means it's observable, right? And second thing is theoretically driven. You need to base upon some theory past research to design an operation definition. So that's hopefully that helps explain the correct thing. And question 11, I think most of you got it right. And so this is about basic research, difference between basic and applied research. So basic research is about the fundamental stuff that might be applied to everybody, but applied research only for certain practical problems or certain populations. So let's see, that's Fiona is looking at whether people in a happy versus people in a sad state are more likely to engage in critical thinking. This seems to be very, theoretically interesting, and also seem to be very, it's a fundamental processes. It's about what kind of emotional states leads to or decreases or increases critical thinking. So it's more basic research. While the Greg is more focused on, like, say, purchasing Pepsi or Coke products, more very specific about solving some real world issues or practical issues, buying Coke or or Pepsi, because they're competitors, right? You probably work for either of the companies. So the correct answer would be B. Okay. Question 12. Okay, question 12 is about, I think most of you did right, which is a good thing. I'm going to speed up a little bit. This is about reliability. So again, so you have new skill on self-esteem, and then, okay, what could be the evaluation of the internal consistency? So if you look at internal consistency, it's one of the important aspects of the reliability. Internal consistency talks about whether different items and scales are shooting in the same direction. It doesn't really care about whether those items really hit the target. They're only looking, well, are you going to shoot in the same direction? Are these items go together? And one way to do it is going to through split half reliability. If half of the scale, let's say I have a 10 item scale. If 5 items of this 10 item scale is consistent with the rest of 5 items, I can say, oh, it's a good scale. It's an internal consistent. But there are so many ways to divide scale into two halves, right? You can put first half questions, and second 5, the rest of the 5 questions. Or you can randomly pick 5 questions and and put the rest of 5 questions together. Since you can randomly choose questions from the whole scales, there'll be like numerous ways for you to divide a single scale into 2 parts. So there could be theoretically numerous split half reliability. If you calculate all this split half reliability and add them together and average, that would be Cronbach's alpha. So that's the most used and most frequently used way to assess internal consistency. The higher the Cronbach's alpha, the better the internal consistent of the scale, meaning the scale's questions are shooting in the same direction. So that's the key. All right, question 13, just in case you don't have any questions. Question 13, yeah. Most of you got right, which is a good thing. So Matthew is conducting an experiment on memory, so feeling pressure of getting significant results. Everybody has. The researcher also got a lot of pressure because journals prefer significant results, and it's easier to publish them than to non-significant results. So that's kind of thing, very normal. So this person, Matthew, continuously gives participants in a treatment group cues about correct answers on the task throughout the whole experiment. So basically, this person gives some suggestion to help his participants to get certain scores. If that's the case, if you imagine I'm a participant, I always kind of got cues from the experimenter about what to do, what should I do to complete a task in experiment. I probably would figure out what the experimenter really expect from me to do. If I can figure it out, I probably would do as they expected. So this is something what we call about the threat to the to the validity. So if I find the answer to a question and I have a hard time to think about, okay, what kind of answer should I get to the measurement? And the experiment always come cues to tell me, okay, this is a good way. That I can answer the question. I probably would expect, okay, this is what they want me to do, then I would do it. So this is what we call experimental expectancies that might influence the participants' validity in terms of responding to the questions. And if a measurement is influenced by experimental expectancies, the measurement will no longer measure the honest responses of the participants. What they will end up measuring would be the expected results or expected reactions from experimenters, and that will be very detrimental to the measurement's validity. So you will end up having an issue with experimental expectancies. And some people are saying, hey, it's about hypothesis guessing. Well, this is I don't think there's enough information for us to figure out whether the participant has hypothesis guessing. The only information we have from this question is that the experiment always gives cues to participants to help them answer the questions. Because the experiment expects those who are in the treatment group to score in a certain way or to respond in a certain way, so they give them cues to make sure they got significant results, such as the scores in the treatment group are different from the control group. And that's what the experiment really expected. And for the hypothesis guessing, that means participant would going to look at the purpose the study and guess what the experimenter want and react in terms of what they think the experimenter want. But in contrast, in the question that we're talking about here, participants did not really seem to engage in guessing what experimenter really hypothesized. They're mostly thinking about okay, what I should do. And at this time, the experimenters gave the participants the cues to guide them to respond to the question in a certain way they want to expect. So it's not about the participant themselves trying to guess. It's more about experimenters throw something to the participant. Okay, you guys pick it. You need to answer this way. Because this is in line with my expectation, with my hypothesis. So there's less an issue of hypothesis guessing, which is a problem of participant themselves. It's more of a problem of the experimenters' expectations. So that's why the correct answer would be B. And A, evaluation apprehension, that means, whenever I got tested, I feel very anxious because I worry I got judged because I'm doing very poorly. People will judge me, right? So that's bad. All right. Any questions? Okay. Looks like you guys are good. So let's just move to question 14. Question 14 is an interesting question because this measurement about attitude toward Cal-LA, and it's about, I think people at Cal-LA are nice and smart. Well, whenever you see this thing, whenever you see the question that asking two different things at the same time, it's a double barrel. But some people were a little bit confused because nice and smart are a good thing, right? And they will argue this is a loaded question. Then again, I want to clarify, loaded question is not like that. Loaded question is basically a kind of, okay, what do you think about me? I'm such a good person. Basically, I give you my answer before or after I ask the question. So that's a loaded question. And you are kind of primed with a sort of direction of how to answer it. So the question that I'll give you, the example I'll give you, what do you think of me? As I'm such a good person, I'm already telling you, you should say, you are a good person, right? That's kind of loaded question. Or the example I gave you in class would be, the gun control revises the constitutional rights. So what do you think about gun control? I tell you the gun control is bad, and I'm going to ask you whether you like it or not. You probably will answer, yeah, it's really bad, right? It's not really testing the range of honest idea from the participants. It's more about I give you some opinion, and you are going to be answering in a way that's close, that related to my opinions, or at least don't in too much conflict with my opinion. So that's the loaded question, to really create biases. Well, the double barrel question just make people hard to understand. What I'm going to whether participant would say, okay, are you going to ask those folks are nice, or are you going to ask them, are they smart, or both? How can I answer it, right? So never ask question two different things at the same time, or three different things, or multiple different things. Only ask one thing at the same time. So that's the key. All right, let's just keep moving on. Question 15. Most of you got right. Congratulations. And so do question 16. So, true experiment. Let me talk a little bit about true experiment. I think we talk a little bit about like different elements of an experiment. We talk about like random assignment. Let's say randomly assign people to different conditions. So different group conditions will have the same people in there. Remember that. And we also need a manipulation. If you don't have manipulation, you only measurement, that will be called an experiment. So if you go to the week of study of human behavior, there's one slide that summarizes everything and the difference between true experiment, quasi-experiment, and measurement. So that's where you can find this answer. But some people would mistakenly chose random selection. So what's the difference between random selection and random assignment? Random selection is basically means you randomly pick people from the population so they become part of your participants. While random assignment is you already got a participant, right? And then you randomly assign them to different groups, whether to receive treatment or no treatment at all. So random selection is about sampling, recruiting participants. Random assignment is about what you're going to do about the participant. What are participants going to get? Whether they get treatment, meds, for example, or placebos. So that's the difference. Question 16, everybody got right, so I'll just skip it. If you have any question or have anything you want to clarify, just let me know. Question 17 is a difficult question. I admit that. So let's look at it very carefully. So again, it's about the measurement scale. Scale is measurement. So this is very important for you because this is very relevant to you if you're doing data analysis. You want to know what kind of scale measurement they use, so you would be able to decide what kind of analysis you need to tackle this data set. So in this study on the well-being and life satisfaction, researchers measured subjective well-being on the 5-item scale that ranges from 1, low SWB, to 7, high subjective well-being. In this example, the subjective well-being is, so again, I think those of you who had hard time really grasping the interval scale might got wrong in the question before and the question here because they're kind of connected. So here we can say this, the subject well-being here is essentially a Likert type scale, right? Because you got different scale points, 1 to 7, again 7-point scale with 5 items, and this is definitely an interval scale, right? Since it's a Likert type scale. And second, if we remember, the interval scales are not going to be able to measure any categorical variables like cat, dog, those nominals or different ranks, first place, second place, gold medal winner, silver medal winner, bronze medal winner, something like that. They won't be able to measure that because interval variable, again, it's like climbing a ladder or climbing the steps. You have to do it continuously. So this only measures continuous variable. So the correct answer is D here for question 17. Just let me know if you got any questions. Pause me on the chat session, okay? Question 18. A researcher has created a new intelligence test. The accessibility to the new intelligence test, the researcher administered the test to college freshmen and then measured samples GPA 1 year later. So basically, let's see how many of you got right. I think more than half of you got right, which is good. About 2/3 of you. And so here this question, so it's about validity, assessment validity, right? If you look at the key things very clearly, there's one say 1 year later, GPA 1 year later. So the intelligence test, if it's a good one, right, it's supposed to be able to predict people's intelligent performance, like GPA, like those academic achievement. So that's the logic behind it. If I design a good intelligence test, it's supposed to predict someone's performance in academia, maybe in the future. So if you're looking at this would be the predictive validity, because predictive validity test if any measures would be able to predict the theoretically relevant variables in the future that is supposed to be predicted by this variable you're trying to measure. If you are measuring the intelligence. And theoretically speaking, intelligence can predict GPAs or academic performance in general. It is supposed to be able to predict the GPA in the future. If your measure of intelligence test can predict the future GPA, that means your intelligence test has a high predictive validity. It's not about face validity because face validity doesn't require any predictions. You just look at the items, see, oh, okay, it's measuring. It is a good measure of, intelligence. It's a subjective rating. Concurrent validity is different because concurrent validity doesn't really look at predict the future. You're only looking at correlation with the different criterion that happens at the same time, or putting it another way, to predict the current behavior. Countability is definitely not a choice either, and I realize some of you chose that, and I just want to clarify countability and feasibility. They don't require any data collection, or you don't have to talk about like other types of tests like GPA. You just sit there and read this damn scale. Okay, read this scale to see if this is a good thing. Oh, it's a good thing. Looks really good, then it's face validity. And if you look at the scale and compare with the theory, the construct, let's say in this scenario, intelligence, if you see the scale really taps the key construct definitions of intelligence, then you can conclude, okay, this is a good scale because it has a high content validity. With all the items matches the definition of intelligence. So this is about content validity. So the correct answer here for question 18 is predictability. Okay, so some of you asking, is it rating from 1 to 7, which made me think that this isn't continuous. If you're asking the question number 617, then question number 17, that means the 7-point scale range from 1 to 7. And again, it's an interval scale. Interval scales are scales to measure continuous variable. So it's not categories, right? We don't really have a lot of categories. A lot of people just confuse with categorical and continuous. Just want to clarify categorical variables are just different types, or continuous variable means that anything that can vary continuously can vary from 1, 1.1, 1.2. Those are theoretically okay. Okay, I don't know. Options. Wondering if the scale for the question could count as ordinal because I feel like there's. Well, I think Pierce, I'm trying to respond to your comments here. Yes, I think it's nice to think critically, and a lot of people actually start to question about whether the Likert type scales really taps the continuous thing. But it's still a debatable issue. But most people in the field would argue that the Likert type scale is still a good measure of a continuous variable, because firstly, you don't have most Likert type scale has multiple items, right? Let's say I measure your self-esteem, 3-item scale. On the first scale, I scored 5 out of 7. Second scale scored 4 out of 7, and third item scale I scored, let's say, 2 out of 7. 3 out of 7, sorry. So 5, 4, 3. So the total score would be 5 plus 4 plus 3. That would be 12. And the average score I get from this whole scale, because people would do average to calculate the total score, it would be 5 plus 4 plus 3 divided by 3. That would be 4. So, and another person might do another way, and you probably will see that the total average score, that would be, let's say, 4.1 or 3.9 or let's say 5.2. So from this perspective, you can see that the average score of the Likert type scale actually will end up being not being like there is not like a lot of possibility of possible scores you can get. Not just 1, 2, 3, 4, 7. You can get a 1.1, 2.2, 4.4, whatever. There's like numerous possibilities depending on the way you respond to this question. And in most cases, we use multiple items in a Likert type scales. So that's sort of thing you want to make sure. But if you pick just a single item, everybody would answer like this. There are only 7 ways for everybody to answer: 1, 2, 3, 4, 7. Right? There is no other choices. So it seems this sort of like categorical variable, but in fact it's not, because the assumption made by Likert in himself is to divide those different categories. Just so let's say 1, 2, 3, 4. So the gaps between 1 and 2, strongly disagree versus disagree, would be the same as 2 disagree versus 3, let's say, slightly disagree. But the reason why it's still debatable, because people have their own understanding of what is scale point mean and what is different, the gaps between different scale points are. But Likert scale is just assume everybody has the same or consensus regarding those scale points. So that's the thing that's kind of get debating, but still we're just trying to understand the Likert type scale as a good measurement of interval scale, but it definitely has some drawbacks because of the subjective understanding of different scale points. Okay, the rating scales. Carrie, you asking, the rating made me think that we had to use what are the rating scales? Okay, so then again, so let's see what scale has. Well, for the rating scales, that rating scale include both interval scales and ratio scales. And here and again, basically it's about in question 17 was trying to ask what kind of variable is looking at, and for these variables you got different scales, right? So we probably would say it's a ratio scale, but again and then again you want to think about if it's a ratio scale, whether you or not you have an 0 point, that would make sense. But here we don't really have a 0 even in the categories can choose. It's only 1 to 7, so it should not be in a ratio scale. So if you think about ratio scale, that you definitely need a 0 point, which would make sense. But here you don't have, so it must be an interval scale. And remember, only interval scale and ratio scale can tap the continuous variable. They cannot really measure the categorical variable. And for categorical variable, you can use the ordinal and nominal scales to measure. So I hope that would answer the questions. Okay, yeah. So the next time, if you feel confused about any questions, just let me know. And I think I would be really happy to answer question any question wordings are confusing, because some questions are what I deliberately made you to kind of mislead you, because I want to test whether you really understand this or not. So I have to provide some quote unquote misinformation, so you make sure you can make your own judgment, because the real world is messy, right? So I do have to make sure that you understand what you learn from my class. But sorry for any confusion. Just let me know if you got any questions. So since it's 3 o'clock right now, and do you guys want to take a short break? If you want to take a short break, like let's say 5 minutes break, just type 1. If not, just type 0. All right. Now I see most of you want to take a break. So how about we just take a 5 minutes break? Let's come back at 3:05. Okay. I'll keep broadcasting here, so you can just feel free to go to bathrooms, to drink water, just have some candies. Okay, so most of you you're doing want to do break. Just let's take a 5 minutes break because some of you are saying no. So I'll see you guys in a few minutes. I'll stay here, and if you want to ask me a question, feel free to type in the chat session. Okay, just take a break and let's come back at 3:05. I'll be right back, guys. All right. Okay. Okay, let's get started, guys. Okay, so going back to the midterm, hopefully we can wrap it up very quickly. So it'll be a short session. I won't do like full session or like ended up like probably at 3:30. So it'll be earlier. So that will be earlier for you, and I'll upload a video on experiment just in case I couldn't really figure out the this kind of online teaching. And starting from next Monday, we'll do our formal online teaching because this week is supposed to for transition, and that's why this canceled all the classes. That's why we have to move to online and to test things out. So thank you for guys understanding, and thank you for your time to show up on YouTube. I know you probably go to YouTube to just enjoy your time and not listen to my boring lecture. But anyway, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. So let's look at the question 19. Question 19 is is relatively easy one as well. Most of you got it right. Over 80% of you, 80% of you. And so this, I actually don't really like testing the definitions, but sometimes because some definitions are really, really confusing. That's why I want to use the exams to clarify things. So here is just an example why testing. So a theory. So theory is very abstract. If you ask like a philosophers, they probably will give you thousands of definitions what theory is. But among those definitions, I would just think theory is just very systematic. It has logic, it has a set of assumptions, a set of proposition, like axioms, boundary conditions. It's a very systematic idea. And it's all ideas about a certain topic. It's about whether, let's say, it's theory of relativity. It's about whether energy, the relationship between the amount of energy of a certain amount of materials and a certain mass, right? So that's a kind of class example of the theory. For psychology, it's actually the same. For example, the theory of five, like say the big five theory about personality traits, basically assumes that everybody share the same 5 dimensions of personality traits, and these 5 dimensions can predict different behaviors differently. And everybody has different, there's individual differences, age differences, and so forth. So that's the kind of idea about theory being very systematic is about a particular topic. Well, it's definitely not a tentative idea waiting for evidence, because many theories already have tested for evidence, so they already got their evidence. So not all theories should have wait for evidence. And it's not about a description of broad topic of a study, because that would be called theory. That would be called a summary, the summary of a study. And some people actually chose answer A because it's the longest one, and many people tend to choose the longest one if they don't know which one to choose, or to choose the shortest answer. Well, sometimes it will make sense, but in this case, it definitely won't work out, because the answer A really talks about the predictions, right? Prediction is basically about what would happen if your hypothesis is confirmed, right? So it could be an educated guess, or it could be a pure guess. So for theory, it should be systematic, and it's about a topic, a certain topic. So question 19 is done, and question 20, all of you got it right. Congratulations. So I will skip it. Question 21. So question 21 is a little bit confusing, and because there's something wrong with the printer. I think the school printer has sometimes doesn't printing things very nicely, so it sometimes will give you extra things, or it will remove stuffs from your document. So something was missing. So in this case, I don't know what kind of sign they add. So basically, there are 3 choices, and it's about classic test theory, the relationship between test scores and errors. So let's go through them one by one. Let's start from the 3, the shortest one. Okay, observed score equals to true score plus errors. So the true score here is whatever the reality is. Let's say I'm 5 feet. I'm 5'4", right? But what could be the errors? Well, sometimes I wear shoes when I measure my height. Sometimes I don't wear shoes. Sometimes I wear a hat, and those things add to the errors in terms of measurement. So those errors can be, let's say, random error, because I sometimes randomly wear things, or it could be systematic error. I would always wear certain shoes, let's say, that has high heels, so I would appear taller, right? So that's the problem. But here in this option 3, observed score equals to true score plus random error. It seemed to be correct, but if you look at the error part, it only accounts for the random error. So you definitely need both random and systematic error, because systematic error is actually more important, as systematic error always pulls the results to a certain direction, not the other, only a certain direction. Whether maybe can increase or sort of like inflate your measurement, or will reduce the measurement, make it seem to be smaller, or make measurement seem to be bigger. So systematic errors always pull the whole results towards one direction systematically. Where random error will just go to all over places. Sometimes increases, sometimes decreases a little bit. And if you got a lot of measurement, the increase and decrease probably will cancel each other out if you calculate an average score. So the option 3 will be definitely wrong. And if you rule that out, you can choose option 1 and option 2. And that will be answer A. So let's go back to the random errors and systematic errors. Some people will just confuse about their origins. And let me just give you more examples. So let's say random error. If you want to measure some people's their attitude towards certain objects, right? Let's say, like I really like the topic on gun control, because I like this idea, this topic, and read a lot of news about it. Gun violence is kind of important issue here in the States. So if you measure this people's attitude towards gun control, you can give it a good measure, right? If there's a good measure, then the problem would be sometimes people just in a hurry, they want to finish up your survey, they just like fill out the forms very quickly. And sometimes they have their errors, and sometimes they don't. Some people have, some people don't. Some people just, they thought they were choosing, let's say, 5 out of in a 7.9 Likert scale, but they mistakenly wrote on a 3. So that could be a random error. If not, because if you have the same person do it again, this person probably would not like mistakenly choose the wrong option. And for others, they were trying to say, oh, I should choose one from the 7-point scale, but they chose this they wrote it wrong, and they chose 3, and that really increased the score from 1 to 3. And if ask a person to do it again, he or she might not make the same mistake. And that is what we call random error. It happens sporadically. It can change the results in different direction. It can increase scores from the original one or decrease score from the original one. However, if you got systematic error, and then here come the loaded question again. That's my favorite part, right? So I ask participants, okay, what do you think of gun control? Because if a gun control, it violates our freedom. And people would, if people saw this question, their mind are primed with the idea of gun control being very bad, so they might end up being, saying, "Oh yeah, gun control is not so good." Even though without the part saying gun control violates freedom, people would really support it. So that really create a bias towards the direction that make people go against the gun control. So in that case, we have a systematic error because you actually essentially decrease people's support for gun control. The results you get in terms of attitude toward gun control would be more negative without this systematic error, because this systematic error pulled participants into the negative spectrum of the attitudes. So this is the systematic error. And systematic error is very hard to cancel unless we have a good measurement. That's why we want to have a measurement that has high validity, that can shoot arrows to the center of the target. I hope you can understand this. And just leave me any comments on the chat session if you have any questions. And for those who just came to the live show, I want to say hi to you. Hope you're doing fine. Just look at the midterm. We're looking at the question 22 and midterm key. Please go to Canvas and download it. All right, so question 22. I think most of you got wrong. Unfortunately, I'm so sad. I wish you all got it right. So I'm just trying to figure out why things go wrong. So maybe because the language here. So because the correct answer is C, the items scale hand together very well. Because this seems very, it's just a little bit different language from what we learned from class. Because I remember I only talk about hand together once. And this is so because I wasn't able to repeat it very often. So you probably were not familiar with this kind of language. But basically, it means the same thing. As you can see the graph. Let's go back to the question, question 2. If you look at the 2 boards or 2 targets, you can see both targets where you have all the shots. They're kind of hand together, right? That's just the kind of sense of being reliable, right? So if we go back to question 22, the alpha coefficient would be Cronbach's alpha, and it is we remember from the class Cronbach's alpha at least be 0.70, right? But it also shouldn't be over 0.95, or if it's just too high, like almost 1, that means you are essentially using the same question or asking the same question using different formats over and over again, and that's very bad. Why not just ask one question? Why repeat asking the same question, right? So that's a bad for internal consistency. But you want to have at least a decent internal consistency in terms of Cronbach's alpha, at least 0.70. I think 0.89 is fine. It's really good. And so answer A, temporal stability. Well, we don't have data for that because this alpha is about internal consistency, where the different questions are going together. Was items valid? Well, as you can see from question 2, if you go back to that, the high reliability means that all questions go together, but going together doesn't mean they're going to the right place. Let's say we're going to take a bus and to go to a certain destination. If you just everybody happens to end up being in the wrong bus won't take us to the destination, right? So we may stuck it, although we all hand together very well. Right? So reliability doesn't equal to validity. So if you have high alpha, doesn't mean you have high validity. And some people say, oh, is that scale has a high test reliability, which I actually don't think so, because you don't have data for that. You didn't like test again for the same participants to see if the test scores would correlate with each other very well. If the correlation is high, then you can say test reliability was high. But here we don't have that kind of argument to be supported by data. So question 22, the correct answer will be C. How about question 23? Which of the following statements are true? So we have, let's say, different scales. We have split half reliability. We have Cohen's kappa. We have different, reliability. So split half reliability means, again, it's a like a foundation of the Cronbach's alpha is about internal consistency reliability. So statement 1 is definitely right. For Cohen's kappa, if you remember, I was going to slides of the reliabilities, talks about how different raters. Let's say I have three guys to look at the person's behavior to rate as a very aggressive or not very aggressive. So I want to test if these 3 persons are able to categorize the behavior unanimously as being very aggressive, not very aggressive. So this is about what the consistency between the judgment made by the group of judges. So that's about Cohen's kappa. It's about interratability, whether the raters would rate the behavior consistently, whether they would agree with each other upon whatever they rated. And third one, the reliability has to do with the match between theoretical construct and its measure. If you look at this closely, a match between theoretical construct and its measure is actually the same as whether your measure can capture the construct that you target to capture. So basically, in other words, it's say the statement 3 says reliability has to do with validity. Then again, reliability is different from validity. There are different formats. There are different things. They have different constructs. Reliable doesn't mean valid. Reliable doesn't mean valid. So only statement 1 and 2 are correct. So the correct answer is A here. Okay, I promise only two more questions to go. Question 24. I think most of you got it right. At least 2/3 of you, which is a good thing. So Lawrence run an analysis that reveals a significant correlation between student GPA and happiness. The data plotted below. Which of the following responses can he use to describe the relation in a scatter plot? So basically, you have this the scatter plot, like there are a lot of dots, and I'm sorry, I wish the graph would be clear, so we know what x-axis and y-axis are talking about. But here I can say that you do not necessarily need information about what x-axis is or y-axis is to answer this question, because it basically you only thing you want to do is to understand the shape of this kind of these dots. As you can see, when whatever value on the x-axis goes up, whatever value on the y-axis goes down. So in this case, it's a negative linear relationship, because if it's a curved linear relationship, it will be like a bell shape, right? When something goes up, y goes up, and but in after certain points, when x goes up, the y would go down. Excuse me. So in this question, really talks about the linear relationship. As you can see in the graph, all the dots sort of line along a single line, and this line is going down. With x, with some value goes up, the other value goes down. It's a negative relationship. Let's say when the happiness goes up, the GPA goes down. When GPA goes up, happiness goes down. Maybe because people had to study so hard to get a good high GPA, so they lost a lot of aspects of their lives. So that might be an explanation of it, but I don't know. But here, is a linear relationship with a negative one. And last question, I think most of you got it right, and I'm so glad. So I'm just gonna go over it very quickly. So Jean conducted a survey study on healthy food consumption, predicting overall happiness. She used the satisfaction with life scale and the subject well-being scale to measure happiness. Which of the following statements true? So basically, this is a correlation study. All the measures were kind of all the variables are measured using scales. So here, the first statement says the respondents are supposed to overreport the frequency of healthy food consumption. Well, there's a likelihood, yeah, and people tend to overreport or underreport things as well. But I don't think there's any information from this scenario and give you the evidence to make this judgment that people are going to overly report they eat more healthy foods such as carrot, which I really hate. Anyways, so I don't think the statement 1 would be the best fitting statement that will be true. Statement 2 and 3, if you rule the statement 1 out, then you pick 2 and 3. But just to make sure the rest of the statement are correct. So statement 2, Jean said she can prevent mono operation bias by using 2 scales to measure happiness. Well, if you look at the original scenario, there was a 1 scale. So 1 scale, that means, okay, because each scale has their own way of operationalize happiness, right? This scale operationalize happiness in terms of well-being, subjective well-being. You might want to use other scales that might operationalize happiness in terms of, let's say, your emotions, right? Or other definitions of happiness. So that's can be very helpful for us to address the mono-operationalization bias. And the third statement, Jean cannot infer causality in this study. I think it's absolutely right, because again, if you want to infer causality by conducting study, you need to conduct a true experiment that can give you 100% certainty to infer causality, because you can manipulate the variable, you can test whether with or without this IV, whether or not there will be change in the dV, right? It tests both the precedence of the temporal precedence, as well as the covariation of cause and effect. And lastly, if your experiment is done very well, it can rule out the alternative explanations or third variables / confounding variables. So here she was running a measurement study, and that's why she cannot really infer causality very well. So the correct answer would be C, with statement 2 and 3 being true. So this is all about our midterm exam. I think many of the questions focusing on some important constructs of reliability and validity, because that's the most difficult thing that you want to tap. And secondly, a lot of questions are about different designs, variable measurements, scales measurements, and I think most of you did a really great job, and congratulations to you. And again, thank you so much for your honest feedback on my teaching, and I really appreciate it. So I think I'm going to just probably gonna end this session about midterm, because I cannot really show my slides over this YouTube. I have to look into it. But at the meantime, I'm going to record in the video and I'll post it on my YouTube channel. You don't have to subscribe channel because I'm not as fun as other channels, but you feel free. But I will also post the link of the videos on Canvas once it is uploaded. So you just take time. I'll make it like say an hour or 45 minutes video. So hopefully I can give a concise view of what the experimental design are. And I'll also upload a short video about how to write up method section. And again, I'm going to test the YouTube and can continue to test it to see if I can put things on. After testing the YouTube, if it didn't work, I will try the Zoom, and just be prepared. There is it is likely we're going to shift to Zoom if we cannot do it on YouTube. But I will give you a heads up. I'll make sure you will have enough time to download it, to set it up, and also give you some guidance via the Canvas. Other than that, I think there's only a few things left. So because we're no longer able to really host exam on in the classrooms, unless the school told us we can go back to classroom, we're assuming that we're going to do the final exam online. So if that's the case, I'm thinking about like doing the exam on Canvas, and I'm experimenting now. Hopefully it will work. If not, and I'll go find other alternatives. And also because we don't have access to classrooms, so you guys probably won't be able to use the school computers, which are equipped with SPSS. Well, right, if you cannot really run an SPSS because it's very expensive unless school can sponsor you, which I don't think so, because my previous classes, none of them were able to install the SPSS to their own computers. So if that's still the case, then I would probably do something else. I'm still debating upon whether I'm going to teach you R, because that's going to take forever. It's very complicated. I don't know if I have enough time. If so, I definitely would like to teach you R, but I'll try to cut some materials out. But I'm sorry because of limited resources. But I'll make sure I can give you some demos. So that's why I really want to fix my computer so I can show you not just like my face, but also my the screen of my laptop, so I can give you some demos. So you probably will repeat those demos once you have access to the school computers later. But then again, the SPS part won't show up on the exam. The only thing that the only thing I'll show on the exam would be your interpretation of the results from SPSS. So that's the key part. If you imagine if you are working at a company and your boss give you a stack of results from the analysis, and boss say, oh, what does those results mean? I have no idea. Then what you learn from this class might be useful for you to answer the question. What does those results output mean? What does the form mean? What's the number? Where's the p value I can find? Or what does p value mean? What does r mean? How to interpret them in a way that both scientifically sound, but also very accessible to lay people. You want to make sure, right? You are a scientist. You probably will end up being a scientist, or at least you have scientific training. But the majority of people in society do not have sophisticated training on science, especially psychological science. So what you want to make sure is you know the knowledge is good, and second, you want to make sure you can communicate to people who do not have they're the same training. So you want to make sure you understand the stats, but also you want to understand how to interpret this result from stats in a lay language, so everybody can understand. So that's the key part of the the rest of lab sessions in this semester, which unfortunately we don't have access to SPSS due to the virus, which is very, very unfortunate. But please let me know if you have any questions on anything of the exam, the format of the classes, which I'm still testing, and I'll be keep you guys posted. Other than that, I think this is all for today's live stream. Although I'm sorry for the beginning where I was really trying to make to have you guys see my my PowerPoints or my computer screen, but it didn't work out. So sorry, I have to cut it short. But I will upload my video for the experimental design later, and I'll give you notice. And once again, thank you guys for your attention. Thank you guys for your time. Hope you can enjoy the rest of the day. And feel free to contact me. You can leave comments on my YouTube channel, or you can leave comments on or send me messages over Canvas, or send me email, or just I'll be happy to help you out. I'll stay online for a couple of hours. Hopefully, I can address your questions very quickly. And thank you very much again. So this will be the end of our live stream, and I'll see if I can post the live stream online just in case some of you were not able to show up. I know you guys are busy, but yeah, don't worry about that. So wish you guys have a nice rest of the day. Bye bye.